Hi friends, so today's video is the third in a series that I've been doing on rediscovering the archetypes of the mature masculine, taken from the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. So if you are interested in mature masculinity, this is a great one to pick up. Today's video is specifically on the warrior archetype, and I'm going to be using these cards from the masculine archetype deck created by Isaac Kotek as a visual aid. So the archetype of the warrior is the one that most people are familiar with when they think about masculine energy. And a lot of people, especially a lot of women, are very uncomfortable with the warrior energy because they might be direct victims of the shadow aspect of the energy. But ironically, those that would cut off masculine aggressiveness in their zeal are actually falling under the influence of the same archetype that they're trying to repress. Now remember, all archetypes live on despite the way we feel about them. And when repressed, they just go underground and they just resurface in the form of emotional and physical violence. So it's very necessary then to face rather than repress this energy. So what we want to do is we want to look at the way that this energy can actually be of benefit rather than the way that we think of it stereotypically as masculinity gone wrong. So the warrior in his fullness, one of the attributes would be proper aggressiveness. Now, when you think of the word aggressiveness, you probably think of very negative connotations. However, the Merriam-Webster dictionary actually defines aggressiveness as readiness to engage in daring or difficult activity. And some synonyms are action, ambition, drive, enterprise, go, hustle, and initiative. Okay, so we want to access proper or appropriate aggressiveness. So basically the writers of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, they define proper or appropriate aggressiveness as a stance towards life that arouses, energizes, and motivates. It pushes us to take the offensive rather than defensive position about life's tasks and problems, and is characterized by forward motion or advancement. So appropriate aggressiveness is known through clear thinking and alertness, which brings me to the very next aspect of the warrior in its fullness, which is clarity of thought. A warrior in his fullest sense is a strategist and a tactician. Okay, so through clarity of thinking, the warrior realistically assesses his capacities and limitations in any given situation. And this clarity of thought comes through living with an awareness of his own imminent death. The fact that we will all die someday and every action counts. Each deed is done as if it were his last. So therefore, the warrior takes decisive action in life, engages it, does not think too much, okay, because too much thinking would lead to doubt, which leads to hesitation, which leads to inaction, and inaction leads to losing the battle. Another aspect of the warrior in his fullest is self-discipline. So all actions of the properly realized warrior are flowing out of self-discipline. So that means that the warrior is concerned with skill, power, and accuracy, with not only outer control but inner control, because the outer control flows from the inner control over mind and attitudes. So therefore, the warrior has the capacity to withstand pain, both psychologically and physical. Another aspect of the warrior in his fullest, in his positive manifestation, is that he shows transpersonal commitment. And what that really means is that he has a loyalty to something larger than himself. So in contrast to the hero who is trying to impress himself and others, the warrior is not trying to impress anybody. So he is an ascetic. So in other words, he does not live to gratify his own personal needs and appetites, but to hone himself, as the writers say, hone himself into an efficient spiritual machine, trained to bear the unbearable in the service of the transpersonal goal. So there is a certain aspect of emotional distance in the warrior, as long as he's in the warrior. So he's not cruel, however, but does not make decisions on an emotional relatedness. So I really resonated, or I really appreciated a metaphor that was used in the book to speak of this aspect of the warrior in his fullness. The authors mentioned that in samurai training, there was a certain psychological exercise that they would go through when feeling threatened or despairing. And basically, they don't say to themselves, I am afraid or I am despairing, but they actually say to themselves, there is someone who is afraid or there is someone who is despairing. Now, what can we do about this? So remember, in order for the masculine archetypes to be utilized in their fullest sense, they must also draw from the other three archetypes as well. So basically, the warrior as the king consciously is stewarding the realm, has stewardship over his realm, and in his decisive action, clear thinking and discipline and courage are able to be creative and generative. The warrior as a magician enables a man to achieve mastery or control over himself and his quote-unquote weapons to channel and direct power to accomplish his goals. And the warrior as the lover makes the warrior compassionate while he does his duty. Now remember, the warrior operating without the archetype of the lover can be disastrous because this energy is by nature emotionally detached. And so that is why it is very necessary, in order to integrate all of the four aspects of mature masculinity, in order for mature masculinity to be realized. You can't be leaning only to one of the archetypes to the exclusion of the others. Okay, so let's take a look at the shadow aspects of the warrior. So remember, each of the archetypes can be viewed as a triangle, as I said in previous videos, with the very top peak being the archetype in its fullest sense, and the bottom base peaks being the archetype in its overactive sense or its underactive sense, which are the shadow aspects at the very bottom peaks. So in this case, the warrior in its fullest is here. The overactive pole of the warrior energy, the shadow aspect that is in this deck named the aggressor. In the book King Warrior Magician Lover, they refer to it as the sadist. And the underactive pole of the warrior here is called, in this deck, the coward. In the book King Warrior Magician Lover, it's referred to as the masochist. Okay, let's talk about the overactive shadow aspect of the warrior energy, which is the sadist or the aggressor. So remember, as I said before, detachment from human relationships without the balancing effect of the lover energy, or the ability to have his mind and feeling under control, can lead to cruelty. So the warrior as an avenging spirit comes into us when we are very angry or very frightened. And this type of shadow aspect has a deep hatred for the weak, helpless, and vulnerable, because it's a projection of and a hatred of his own masochist energy within himself. There is a similarity between the shadow aspect of the sadist and the adolescent hero. Basically, the shadow warrior carries into adulthood the adolescent insecurity and the violent emotionalism and desperation of the hero, and tries to make a stand against a lot of times what's the overwhelming power of the feminine, and tries to fight against it vehemently. So people with compulsive personalities are especially open to this warrior energy in its shadow aspect. They get a lot of work done, but they're driven by a deep anxiety, desperation, and they spend their lives basically attacking everything and everyone. And certain professions are more prone to this dysfunctional warrior energy, such as people in the military, revolutionaries, activists, workaholics, and basically any profession that puts excessive pressure on a person to perform. So the underactive shadow aspect of the warrior is referred to as the masochist, or in this deck, the coward. So basically this happens when a person projects the warrior energy onto others, but not himself, and causes a man to experience himself as powerless. So in other words, he is unable to defend himself psychologically and allows himself to be pushed around by others, and have others exceed what he can tolerate, while still trying to keep his self-respect, psychological and physical health, but obviously not doing a very good job of it, because he's allowing people to push him past his own boundaries. So we may actually fall under this shadow when we don't know when to quit an impossible relationship, a circle of friends, or a frustrating job that might be demanding way too much of us than we are willing or we are able to give. So the masochist takes far too much abuse for far too long and then basically explodes in a sadistic outburst of verbal and often physical violence, because that's what happens with the shadow aspects of either the overactive pole or the underactive pole. They can switch really quickly. So let's just talk a little bit about how to access the positive aspects of the warrior energy. So accessing the warrior correctly, what does that look like? Basically, it is the ability to be energetic, decisive, courageous, enduring, persevering, and loyal to a greater good beyond ourselves. So these are very positive qualities to have. And so they look very different from what we would stereotypically think of the warrior energy, which is, remember, just one shadow aspect of the actual energy. And so it is really important, once again, to know that if we want to access the warrior energy in our fullest, or in its fullest sense, we must counterbalance it with that of the king, the magician, and especially the lover, because the warrior energy is by nature detached and the lover energy delights in others. So while being detached, which is okay to a certain degree and for certain reasons and for certain functions, we also can at the same time be warm, compassionate, and generative. So there you have it, guys, the warrior energy in its fullest as one of the 4 aspects of mature masculinity. Remember, the warrior energy is not something to be feared because it is basically not something that is negative. It's the shadow aspect of the warrior in the form of the sadist that people have a problem with. So don't try to repress your warrior energy. You want to make sure you bring it online in such a way that you allow yourself to be able to go out into the world with energy and to make a mark in a positive way for the good of others. Don't allow yourself to be disidentified from the warrior energy to such a place where you're going to be pushed around, that you're not going to be able to stand up for yourself and those around you, and basically you fall under the category of the coward. So if you would like to get more information on the other aspects of positive masculinity, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're going to be notified when other videos come out. And if you got any value from this video, please hit the like button and feel free to share the video if other people can benefit from it. Hope you have yourselves an amazing day.